Good morning. The February the 24th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. In the interest of promoting health and safety as we continue to deal with COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Estimates will continue to meet virtually. At this time, I will ask our comptroller, Mr. Bill Henry, for any corrections or additions to today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are no changes and corrections. There are no protests for today's meeting. There are no deferrals or withdrawals. The following items are being moved to the non-routine agenda. On page 2, item number 2, Health Department agreement with Black Men's Exchange National Incorporated. On page 4, item number 9, Health Department agreement with Sisters Together and Reaching Incorporated. On page 5, item number 12, Health Department agreement with AIDS Interfaith Residential Services Incorporated. On page 6, item number 13, Health Department agreement with Project Place Incorporated. On page 11, item number 3, extra work order 008 TR03319, replacement of bridge number BC 3212, Harford Road Bridge over Herring Run. On page 17, Department of Law Settlement Agreement and Release. On pages 19 through 20, Bureau of Procurement Contract number 08000, Integrated Body Cameras. On page 21, item number 5, Bureau of Procurement Contract number B50004352, Armed Security Guard. On pages 30 through 31, Department of Housing and Community Development Land Disposition Agreement with Black Women Build, Baltimore Incorporated. On pages 32 and 33, Department of Housing and Community Development Land Disposition Agreement with UPC Westside CDC, Upton Renaissance LLC, THHA Incorporated. Page 60, Department of Human Resources, Personnel Matters, Mayor's Office. The following items are being moved to the routine agenda. Pages 21 and 22, item number 6, Bureau of Procurement Contract number 06000, subject matter expert consultant. And pages 22 to 23, item number 7, Bureau of Procurement Contract number 06000, Acting Chief Information Security Officer Agreement. There are the following abstentions. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on page 3, items number 5 and 6, Health Department agreements with Johns Hopkins University. And on page 4, item number 7, Health Department agreement with Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Nick Mosby is abstaining on pages 18 and 19, item number 2, Bureau of Procurement Contract numbers 06000, Investigative Search Licensing. There are no abstentions for myself, Acting City Solicitor James Shea, or Acting DPW Director Matthew Garbark. That is all the changes to the agenda today.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I now direct the board's attention to the memorandum from my office dated February the 22nd, 2021, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items. Together with the corrections and additions provided by our amazing comptroller, I will now entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
I second.
Since it's been moved and properly second, right now we will go and vote. All those in favor of approving the items of the routine agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda is now adopted. Now we will go to the non-routine agenda items. First up, we're going to hear one associated with the Health Department. It's can be found on pages 2 through 6, the Health Department agreements. I requested that these 4 agreements be placed on the non-routine agenda and follow up to our questions from last week. This is a situation where the city is a fiduciary pass-through for nonprofits or organizations to better serve our city. And when we see these types of contracts or these types of arrangements that are federal and state, MBE and WBE requirements from a city perspective do not apply. I think we're going to continue to work with the administration to try, and as well as the comptroller's office, to try to figure out, how we can intently spell it out on the actual Board of Estimates agenda. That way, it's just providing more clarification as well as transparency to the citizenry of Baltimore. At this time, we have Leslie Thompson, Chief Finance and Administration for BCHD, as well as Ms. Chief Lashella Miller, Director of MWBOO, with us this morning, and they have the floor if they have anything to add to these items.
Good morning, Council President, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, and members of the board. We do recall these items coming to MBU, and they were submitted as waivers. Again, these are federally funded initiatives and grant programs, which, as you stated, our goals are do not apply. So that's all we have related to these items for the Health Department.
Thank you, Chief Miller. At this time, are there any questions? I'm sorry. Did I hear?
I said you're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh, okay. All right. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from board members? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Just to be clear, Mr. President, are you asking for a motion on all four, or are you doing it individually?
Mr. Comptroller, yes, this motion will carry for this particular item on the non-routine of all four, which are on pages 2 through 6, the Health Department agreements. So I think we have a motion. I'm not sure if I heard it, that it's been properly seconded.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and properly second. All those in favor of approving these items, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The 4 items are now approved. Moving on to the Hartford Road Bridge EWO. It's the next item on the non-routine agenda. It can be found on page 11, item 3, extra work order number 8, in the amount of $299,573.57, TR 3319, replacement of bridge number BC 3212, Hartford Road Bridge over Herring Run. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to Director of Transportation, Director Steve Sharkey. He and members of his team are on the line and can explain the items. Director Sharkey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mayor, Comptroller, and other members of the Board of Estimates. Yes, this is a change order for an acceleration on the Hartford Road Bridge project. So about 2 years ago, if anybody remembers, we had a horrible summer where numerous 10 to 20 to 30 plus year flood storms came through the Baltimore area. And this was at a critical juncture of the Hartford Road Bridge construction, which frequently would wash out the materials and work being done. So at that time, we worked to fix those issues, but also this current year, we saw the construction schedule coming up and realized that another critical piece of concrete curing on the bottom part of the bridge needed to be done this before this winter. So we instructed the the contractor to go ahead and advance the schedule so that we would not, A, not go behind, and B, not be hit with extra charges for length of time of work. So this is something to A, save time, B, go forwards, and not be hit with extra charges. See, the thing about concrete is that it can't be cured in the winter. It needs a certain temperature for it to actually harden and become the structurally sound material that is needed to support bridges.
Thank you, Director Sharkey. I think I see the hand of Mr. Comptroller. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Sharkey. I had a couple questions that I already knew, but then you said something that I wasn't sure I followed, which was that one of the reasons why we're trying to improve the schedule completion date is to avoid extra charges. Are these extra charges from someone other than the contractor?
No. So the extra charges, if the construction schedule of any project falls off, the contractor will ask for extra charges for the length of time. So if we hadn't done this work before the winter, we would have had to wait, leave the vehicles and trucks and stuff out there, and the project would have stopped. So it would have extended the time, and they would have been able to get charges back to us for an extended time schedule.
So we were going to be paying extra money either way. We might as well get it done sooner.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I got you. All right. Now I get that. Can you share with the board members the history of the extra work orders on this project? I know that there is a list of how many there have been, and what's the total amount and how that compares to the total contract value?
The initial contract amount was,
I'm actually, can you hold on? It looks like the mayor wanted to add something.
Yeah, I would just would add too, and Mr. Director, just for the general good of the public who may not know about this too, when after you give the list of the change orders on this project, also talk about like the history of the project, like the age of the bridge, how long it's been in that condition, which leads into many of the things that we're dealing with this particular project.
certainly. So do you want me to start with the change orders? Yes, okay. Change order number 1, there was a test pit clean storm drain. This is for $38,000. This was a couple of different small pieces. Gene, could you weigh in on these? Change order number 1?
Yeah, so they had to test pit and locate some utilities on the project, and it happened to be a storm, like a storm manhole. And then also it had to deal with cleaning an existing storm drain in the park that was flooding the site. They had to remove an existing electrical vault that was undiscovered. And then the E&S control or sediment control from DPW wanted us to put some additional protection around some of our stockpiles.
Thank you, Gene.
Director Sharkey, before you go through all 8, I just want to make sure, is there a question from a member of the board that wants the details of every single change order, 1 through 7, plus this 8th one that we are considering right now?
Well, Mr. President, technically, I asked for a list of the extra work orders on this project. It was more of a question of, I was just looking for dates and amounts, but I don't have an objection if Mr. Sharkey wants to do a brief explanation of what each one is for, because I think that goes to the mayor's question about making it explicit how much work there was that needed to be done to the bridge because of its age.
Okay, proceed, Director Sharkey. Thank you.
Certainly. Change order 2 was remove lead painted parapet walls. So as we found some more lead paint, that increased the cost of that portion of the job. That is for $221,000. Change order 3, there was another utility conflict that was found when the bridge was opened up for $60,000. Change order 4, and I'm going to need a little help with Gene on this one. So
Okay.
it turned out that the approach to the bridge on one side had, I guess, a much more sturdy rock structure than expected. Gene, can you explain that?
Yeah, so change order number 4 was for excessive rock that was encountered at higher elevations than anticipated. So it caused trouble for our contractor to get the footing elevations in correctly. It meant more rock removal. And at some point, the engineer decided to raise the elevation of the of the footers, and just put a leveling pad over top of the existing rock. And it actually reduced the amount of the 1.6 million.
Yeah, so basically that type of rock was unexpected in that section of Harford Road due to, I guess, Baltimore's geography. The next couple ones are going to be the primary cause of the change orders and the need to improve the schedule, and that is because of the excessive rain. So just to step back, the city and SHA has historically designed bridge projects with the expectation of a minimum of a 2-year storm. So a 2-year storm is a storm that is expected to happen every 2 years. Now, of course, that is not the case in terms of what is actually happening. So there's tons of federal government maps that say this is a storm that's every 2 years. This is how high the water level will get. This is the amount of danger that happens. And of course, over the last 10 or 15 years, whatever the expectation has been blown. Well, I was going to say blown out of the water, but that's sorry. But it's actually not a funny case because the storm maps are wrong. They're not catching up with the speed at which climate change is happening and with the amount of water that comes through. So at that point in time, so after this and some other cases that are similar, we're now designing these for 10-year storms, the expectation of 10-year storms, which will be a much sturdier design of what's protecting the work underneath each bridge. So the first one is, let's see, the first one is a redesigned stream diversion construction for $823,000. Change order 6 is a new manhole for $9,000. And change order 7 is further funding for the redesigned stream diversion. And then this is change order 8, which is to improve the current schedule so that we beat the concrete issue this year.
All right, thank you. Who reviews these extra work orders to make sure that they're reasonable?
So
Before you submit them to the board.
Number 1, the Department of Transportation bridge section reviews them. Number 2, we have a consultant to also help review the costs, RK&K. Third, SHA has to review all of the bridge project change orders for reasonability.
Okay. When you put together the RFPs for infrastructure projects like this, would it be possible for DOT to assume that there will be unknown work, especially when you're dealing with infrastructure that's this old and for which the city has, comparatively sketchy records as to the exact details of its construction? If you did that so that you could factor in more project costs upfront, then wouldn't that allow you to have an initial cost that is more in line with the actual cost?
I would say that SHA in the 80s, now this is according to BMOL, and he's not, I don't believe he's here at the moment. In the 80s and 90s, there was more of a cushion expected for these types of jobs, but over time, SHA has not been in favor of that. We could talk to SHA about adding more of a cushion into each project with the expectation. I certainly believe that can be the case for these bridge projects. And let me segue you into what the mayor was talking about. We have not really, our infrastructure is truly aging, and many of the bridges are not, we're fixing them and we're repairing them over time, but as you open something up, you find new things such as lead paint or other issues. Harford Road Bridge is a very special case. This is a it's a interestingly designed bridge that I believe there might only be 2 of this type of design in all of America. Gene, can you describe that a little bit further?
Well, it's a concrete beam bridge, and it has like a pedestrian tunnel arch that's built alongside of it or along with it. So an access through the park and up to Montebello. And it has like a facade on it that gives the appearance of like an arch structure, but it's actually panels that are placed on the sides of the parapet and gives it that appearance of like a beautiful arch section.
So yeah, so this of course was took quite a long time to actually design this type of bridge. So there was, even back when Director Fox was here and O'Malley was here, we had design sessions as well as brought in other cities to discuss the type of design that this would be to fix this bridge.
I think it would be a worthwhile conversation to have with SHA. I mean, if we were to let bigger contracts up front and encourage the initial contract size to be, shall I say, more forgiving of the possibility of finding additional problems inside whatever it is that we're working on. Couldn't we also include incentives for completing the project ahead of schedule and under budget, if it turns out that there aren't a lot of extra problems?
So I believe that was done in the past at some point in time, and we could look into something like that again. I've seen that before. I haven't seen that. I don't know about that on federal jobs, but it could be stay under this budget, you get a bonus type thing.
Okay.
But we'd have to talk with SHA and see if it fits under federal regulations.
The last question I have, Mr. President, is are low bid contracts really the best way to address infrastructure projects like this? I mean, if we're dealing with assets that are generations old and likely to contain hidden conditions that require extra work, is there any benefit to just looking for the best overall contractor to work on the project and then figure out how much it's going to cost to get the work done at a good speed and a safe speed?
I have not. So there's alternative methods, but I've never seen something that does not put a competitive bidding process into infrastructure projects like this. So there is something, design build projects, which we have one of, which we are not, I guess I do not believe we were ready for. It takes a lot of understanding and knowledge up front to know how to do these other types of projects. We've been design bid build here for a billion years. I'd love to see and it even took a charter amendment to change us to allow some of these alternative projects. So we have one alternative project, or technically two, but we have one. DPW has one. Theirs is seeing more success out at the water plant. So it takes a lot of upfront knowledge that I don't necessarily believe we have at this time. I'd be interested in investing in it once our current projects are over. But yeah, I certainly see those. But in terms of just choosing a vendor and then finding the price, I don't believe that. I believe that would run afoul of both local, state, and federal bidding regulations.
Okay, good to know. Thank you very much, Mr. President. That's all the questions I have.
No, thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Director Sharkey, I'm sorry, Director Garbar.
I just wanted to also add that all the change orders do also go through the Department of Audits, the Law Department, and the Change Order Review Committee. So all of those also do sign off to make sure before it comes to the board. I just wanted to mention that.
No, thank you. Director Sharkey, I think a point that Comptroller Henry was hitting at is the contingency of budgeting. My assumption is for projects of this size, it's probably about 10%. Is that right? 5 to 10%?
Yeah.
So is it 5 or is it 10? Or like how do we come up with the contingency?
Gene, what was the contingency for this project?
I think it's closer to 10.
Closer to 10. Yeah. So that's about right. I guess when I look at this change order, Director Sharkey, the first thing that jumps to my mind is if we did not do this change order, how longer will it extend the completion of this project?
Gene, what do you think? 3 or 4 months? 5 months?
Yeah. So by getting the bridge deck in place before the cold weather hit us, I think we can save several months.
All right. So basically with $300,000, we saved maybe about 4 months. I guess the other thing is when I take a step back and look at it, I know that right now this puts us at about 20% increase of the total original budget of about $19 million. And I believe we're only about 61% complete or the overall project. That seems pretty problematic to me. Is that the case that, those numbers that we're about 20% over as it relates to the 19 million and we're only about 60% completed as it relates to the overall project?
So I would just say this regarding that. Director Sharkey mentioned like the stream problems that we had in the beginning of the project.
Yeah.
Was really devastating to this project, and not only this one, but Edmondson Avenue Bridge. We had problems with stream diversion there as well. So it was very unusual to get these types of storms, and it really made it difficult for the contractor to move the work forward. They had to clean up a lot of storm damage, and so it caused a lot of problems for these projects. Yes.
Understood. Yeah, I just wanted to paint a picture of reality to the board that with 40% left on a $19 million project, that we're already 20% over. And I'm pretty sure the 10% or so contingency is already pretty much factored in or accounted for, that we're going to significantly kind of overrun this project. Now, if saving 3 or 4 months on the back end buys us anything, I'm not sure. But the concern is that the likelihood that we'll be coming back with additional change orders specific to the next 40% of the work that's remaining is a real reality. I guess, Director Sharkey, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, that is correct. There will be 1 or 2 more change orders coming through in the future.
The only other thing I would like to add, I guess, somewhat counter to, I guess, the point that you tried to make, Mr. Comptroller, is it's important that these individual changes kind of come in front of this board and that we don't front load the kind of bidding process. We want them to be as nimble and Six Sigma achieving as much as possible to ensure that we kind of understand and know, the specific intricacies associated with these types of projects. As we go on and on, the idea is hopefully we become more efficient and effective in getting closer to on budget and on time. I think that is a real concern. I'll talk to the administration and talk to the different agencies. I'm really keen of like trying to develop a centralized project management office with PMPs and professional engineers to kind of oversee the amazing work that our agencies do specific to the vendors. That way it's just a complete objective view. The agencies can focus on the projects and moving projects forward, but the PMPs can actually focus on these large scale projects. So without further ado, are there any additional questions, concerns that the board would like to bring up to Steve Sharkey or Department of Transportation? Hearing none, Director Sharkey, as always, thank you for coming extremely well prepared and being extremely responsive to the board. I'll entertain a motion at this point to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
This item has been approved and properly, moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Next on, we're going to move to the Law Department. This next item, again, on the non-routine agenda today can be found on page 17, Department of Law Settlement Agreement and Release. To speak on this, we have Ms. Liz Ryan from the Law Department, as well as Mr. Yusuf Kebeda from the Department of Public Works. Ms. Ryan or Ms. Kebeda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Mr. Kebeda, do you want me to defer to you then to start?
Sure, I can provide some of the history on this particular issue. The location in question, the 8400 block of Greenway in Parkville, Maryland. During 2016, we were undergoing the meter conversions, where the old style meters were being replaced with the new AMI, AMR infrastructure. And during that time frame, there was a flurry of activity on that street. And it appears in looking at some of the records that there was a meter vault that was accessed by one of our contractors to make one of these conversions. it appears that the work was not as there were issues with the work. I believe there was a failure on one of the meters, and the vault, from what we understand, was secured. The opening was secured, and then a few months later, I believe around the November timeframe, a resident on that street apparently fell through the opening, and so that is the basis for the case, which I'll let Ms. Ryan speak about, and then I can provide more answers or details on the work in particular.
Thank you. To add to what Mr. Kavita said, there is a DPW record of DPW water repair work in the area in July of 2016, and the record did state that DPW performed work and left the area safe for pedestrians. I believe that was accomplished based on my review of records for the case by setting cones and tape around the area, and that was in July of 2016. And then unfortunately in November of 2016, the cones and tape were no longer there when the plaintiff's bike wheel went into the water-filled hole. And so I did discuss the case earlier with Mr. Kabidi as to now what the Department of Public Works could do going forward when work is not finished, as to sort of their general aspirational goals. And so now I'll let Mr. Kabidi add anything else.
So the circumstances around the individual falling in, obviously, there's no footage of how that happened. There are many reasons why a secured area, meaning an area that with unfinished work where there is an excavation or an opening that has been secured with cones and flags, could be breached. From our perspective, what and I, Mr. Council President, and by the way, I didn't say good morning when I first started, so my apologies for just blasting right into it. But good morning to the board.
Good morning.
Thank you. So one of the core principles of the Bureau is business process improvement. So, Council President, when you do talk about Six Sigma and establishing sound processes, that is something that we are after. I totally buy into that. So, from this perspective, what we routinely do, our protocol, whenever there is work that is not finished, for reasons such as maybe the crew that is working on that particular area does not have the materials that they need, therefore we need to wait for the next crew to finish the work, or the shift is ending, so the next crew is going to take over. We provide that information to the next crew, letting them know, okay, this is what was done, and this is what needs to be finished. That is our protocol. That is our process. From time to time, there might be things that do fall through the cracks, and it appears this case is one of those situations where unfinished work was not addressed immediately, and it did linger for a few months, leading to the unfortunate incident.
Thank you, Mr. Kavita, as well as Ms. Ryan. At this point, I believe there's questions from Mr. Comptroller. Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I don't mean to be argumentative, but I do take issue with what it sounds like you're saying, that when we were doing, when we, the city, either using in-house employees or using contractors, when we were doing work on this water vault, it sounded like you said we secured the vault by putting cones around it and flags.
The protocol is to secure any opening with cones, and then we typically put tape around it. And in a lot of cases, if it's on the street, if it's on the road, we will plate it. We'll put a steel plate to make sure that it's not easily lifted.
But if we're leaving a hole in the sidewalk that someone could fall into, like happened here, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying not to do what you're saying you do. I'm saying putting up cones and tape to make sure that people can see that there's a hole is not the same as securing the hole. That is calling attention to the hole. But securing the hole would mean creating a physical barrier that is impossible to get through. That's securing. Just letting people know, making it easier to see the hole isn't securing it. Can we agree on that concept?
We can agree, and if I may restate, yes, when I said secure the hole, like I said, we do have markers that are easily visible, but typically what our protocol is to make sure that whatever that hole is covered. In the street, we have plate trucks that travel to various work sites on a regular basis, making sure that those plates, those steel heavy plates, are placed over the openings. When it comes to the sidewalks, typically we'll just use plywood, or in some cases, if we do have it, we'll put a steel plate. So with the intent being that any random person can't just easily lift it and access our asset or do anything.
But it sounds like in this case, there was no plywood or steel plate covering this hole. There were just cones and flags or cones and tape around it back in July when the work was done.
I believe June, July timeframe is when the work was started.
So in either of your investigations, did you determine why we had work done in July, but in November, when the plaintiff tried to bike over what they thought was just apparently a shallow pool of water and turned out to be a big hole in the sidewalk, why was there still a hole there several months later?
So that unfortunately is a difficult question for me to answer. We are still in the process of digging through the notes in our maintenance management system to see where the breakdown in communication occurred. Because, like I said, when there is unfinished work, typically the next crew should carry it through. So I believe that there, based on the fact that there were meter conversions going on that street, the fact that there was a particular issue with a meter that required repair, not just replacement, and we had a few other parties involved in that area, maybe through the flurry of activity and work, that slipped through the cracks. I understand that is not a satisfying answer, but Mr. Comptroller, that's the information that I have at this moment as far as what happened.
I appreciate that it's not a satisfying answer. The pain of the dissatisfaction is lessened a little bit by the fact that you've used flurry of activity to describe it now more than once, and I'm enjoying the disconnect between a flurry of activity and nothing happening for several months between July, when we were, according to our records, working on this vault, and November, when somebody fell into it. Do your records show the name of the contractor who was working on the vault?
The initial contractor that was working on the meter was Itron, and then we had Spinello come up on the back end of the timeline.
So if there must be a contractor whose job it was to cover the vault back up after the meter work was done. Like, is that not a specific contractor's job?
If everything goes as planned, absolutely. The work should be, when it's complete, everything should be covered up and restored to its original condition.
So who is the contractor who is supposed to cover the meter vault back up after the work was done?
That would be Itron.
Okay. Mr. President, I see that Director Garbark.
Yeah, I was going to go to. Unfortunately, he just went out. Director Garbark, are you with us? Oh yeah, Director Garbark.
I am. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So I just wanted to add. This came We were advised of, I think, this lawsuit that the individual had filed almost 3 years after. So there was a period of time from when it actually happened to when the city found out that suit had been filed. And I think one of the issues was, and has been, the records are either not there or contradictory. So we look in our work order system that our maintenance crews use, and the issue shows this securing of the site, and it mentions securing of the site, and then it mentions specifically cones and flags, but it doesn't then mention that the contractor came back out. So we have a separate system that has daily reports for contractors who are doing work. We went through that. There was no daily report mentioning this incident or what ended up happening. So as we were trying to piece this stuff together, it looks like there just isn't the information there. And it looks like it was opened up in July. It apparently was called in. Someone from the
Sorry, Director. You're breaking off. Can you hear us now? Are you back, Director? Director Garbert?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You took the video off.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah. So it's a whole lot of information just isn't there. As Mr. Cabetta mentioned, our policies, we never leave a hole open. We either plate it, we put plywood over it, or we actually backfill it with sand, dirt, or cold patch. Or otherwise, we physically barricade it with something that cannot be moved through. In this circumstance, there's no, as Mr. Cabetta mentioned, no satisfying answer of how this happened as we're going back through to piece this together with our old work order system, the construction inspections, and the records that we have from that.
So, Mr. President, where I'm going with this is, we're about to approve spending $50,000 on this settlement, and I don't begrudge the plaintiff that money for, well, the medical bills and apparently additional expenses, because I think there's an expectation that when you're riding your bike along, you're not going to fall into a hole that has been left. What I'm more concerned about is the fact that the dissatisfactory part of this is not that we can't quite figure out what happened. That is frustrating, I have to admit. The dissatisfaction comes from the fact that it's unclear to me that anyone is taking responsibility for it. Like we're paying, but and that's one sort of ultimate level of responsibility, but it's not clear to me that the person who's supposed to enter the daily reports, who we don't have, has been yelled at for not doing it. It's not clear to me that the contractor who was supposed to cover this back up has been approached about their responsibility for sharing in the cost of what we, the city, now are paying out. That and my other question, and this is technically for the law department, is when I understand there's a settlement committee that reviews all of these before they are brought to the board for approval. Is that part of the settlement committee's work to try to establish whether, if the agency that is bringing this issue to the board has done whatever investigation or due diligence is required to determine whether we can seek some share of this money from the contractor that was supposed to do this work on our behalf. Is that already part of what settlement committee does? Or should we be asking these questions at this level, at the board, because that's not part of what settlement committee does?
Ms. Ryan, would you like me to answer that? I'm not sure your level of familiarity with the settlement committee. Mr. Controller, I would think that the possibility or attempt to bring in a third party, which is what this would be part of the defense of the case. I don't think necessarily that the committee would inquire. I think that's part and parcel of the case. I will say this, that your cause of action for a contribution like this doesn't accrue until you actually make a payment as a defendant. So we can still look at the prospect, if it hadn't been looked at already. I simply don't know. But we can still look at getting a contribution, and it would only be for $25,000, the share, pro rata share of the settlement. So we can still look at that. My hunch is it would not be a successful case because while we don't have the records to defend ourselves, it's unlikely that we have the records to prosecute the contractor, but we can certainly look if it hasn't already been checked.
So to be clear, if we had the right records that would show that Itron was supposed to cover this back up sometime between July and November, then we would have just defended ourselves in the first place and said it wasn't our responsibility. Itron was the one that messed up. They were supposed to do it. Here are these records showing that this was when they said the work was completed, but then they never went and covered it back up, at which point we just would never be in this position to be offering a settlement? Or
possibly. It's more likely that we have responsibility too, some form of vicarious liability. The idea is that we would share it with a joint tortfeasor.
Okay, because we were the ones who hired Itron.
Right.
And they were agents on our behalf.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So in that case, is this investigation ongoing, or is it effectively stopped now because we've ascertained that we just don't have the record?
I don't know the answer. Ms. Ryan may.
Thank you. I can weigh in, and I hope not to muddy the waters more, but I might. So I did work with a number of people in the Department of Public Works to try to figure out what happened here and piece together the records, including Anthony Galloway, who was quite helpful. And he actually went out to the site a couple times and he looked through all of the records. And one of the issues here is that there really is not a record that explains or that shows a referral to a contractor. And so we really have this absence of record that makes it very hard to point the finger at somebody else. But there is evidence that we were in the area and that we did excavate. What complicates matters is that yes, there are also records of a flurry of activity, but in like a one block area. So there is the city record of the city doing something, including an excavation, including making an area safe with cones and tape, which matches up with what the plaintiff's story. There is not a record to explain the question that I think the comptroller's been asking. Well, why did the hole stay open? There's also doesn't seem to be a record that I've seen, and I don't think so far Public Works has seen it, but I don't want to speak for them as to what was supposed to happen, who was supposed to do the work. Mr. Galloway even went through Miss Utility at one point, and he looked to see if any contractor had pulled a Miss Utility ticket in the time period before the plaintiff fell to do the work out there. He didn't find that, and again, potentially complicate matters, but maybe this is helpful. There is a record of the city Department of Public Works maintenance calling Miss Utility in October, which would indicate that we intended to dig or do something. But unfortunately, there's no record chain to even match up with that Miss Utility record. So I felt as the trial lawyer, what we were left with at the end of the day is not many records to defend ourselves and not many records to go against somebody else. And actually, at the time we settled the case, if we go forward with the settlement, prior to summary judgment. And there were two co-defendants who could potentially have gotten out of the case on summary judgment, the county and the adjoining apartment complex, but they have contributed to this settlement. So theoretically, if we didn't settle it now, the city could end up at trial paying whatever the judgment is on its own. So that also factored into the
Yeah,
settlement.
I'm not questioning the wisdom of the settlement. You've laid out a very understandable case for why the city is now taking the actions it's going to be taking. What I'm looking for is some evidence that anybody at DPW is either accepting or being required to take responsibility for the lack of records that has put us in this situation, and some sign, and because I haven't heard this either, that DPW has made an effort to change its processes and guarantee good record keeping going forward in these kinds of situations. Can someone speak to either of those?
So for me, I look at it operationally, and so what we have is a case. It looks like a case where there was a breakdown in communication between parties, whether it was city crew to city crew, contractor to city crew, or what have you. We have a fairly robust communication system where our crew chiefs, supervisors, superintendents are constantly on the radio and communicating with one another about the status of various projects. To me, that is not enough. And so what we are looking at is
not unless you're going to keep recordings of your radio conversations for several years.
Right. And so to aid with the documentation, we have a computerized maintenance management system, all CityWorks, that many other agencies use. And that is where our crew supervisors, superintendents enter in information. Sometimes it's as simple as just choosing drop downs about the status, and other cases actual notes saying this is what happened, this is what I did, I spoke to so and so and so on and so forth. And the consistency of that is where I'm challenged right now. And so that's what we're working towards, to make sure that our personnel are actively using the tool that we already have to make sure that information is documented. It's not where I would like it to be. And I think this example from 5 years ago communicates that this is what can happen. Thankfully the individual, wasn't worse than what happened, but still, we need to make sure that we have this documentation so things do not go unattended to for an unreasonable amount of time.
And
So,
Mr. Comptroller, if I may add also, that's, Mr. Capetta mentioned that's the maintenance side of the house. On the construction side of the house, we are working very closely with BSIT and the other construction agencies to upgrade our workflow management system. It's called CM14, which manages and keeps all of the data and records of all of our construction inspections and all of our management reports and everything for our construction projects. What we've also done is, in addition to just city inspectors, we also have contractors that we have hired specifically to do construction management inspection, to make sure that our contractors and those doing construction work are doing exactly what they're supposed to do per their contract. So obviously this was a failure. It rests with the city, it rests with DPW. We are ultimately responsible for this incident. And I believe we are doing a lot of things to try to make sure that something like this doesn't happen. And one of the issues is making sure we have the proper records, and then B, we have routine or spot inspections to make sure that these areas are completed the way they've been completed.
okay. Mr. President, thank you very much for indulging me on these questions, and I look forward to hearing reports back from DPW as they improve these processes. And I'd love to hear something proactive going forward about how we are doing a better job of requiring individuals to input the information into the system so that if we need this information in the future, those records are complete.
Yeah, I mean, I think the crux of all of this is, and the concern is potentially a vendor was paid for work that they may not have completed. Clearly this could have resulted in a much more serious bodily injury to a constituent or definitely customer in the county. So the only question I have, Director Garbar, is CM14, does it allow folks to upload pictures?
Yes, I
It
believe that
does.
it's,
Okay. I mean, maybe looking at the process of closing out jobs, uploading the closed out picture at different phases, might be a way. But I know we are covered well with your leadership, Director Garbark, and thank you, Mr. Kibita, for it. I want to state for the record, this took place almost 6 years ago. This is not something that took place 6 months ago. So this is clearly out of the hands and the reach of many of us, even though we're responsible as agents and representatives of the city to make sure that we do our duly work in an appropriate manner and fashion. That's what we're doing today. The other thing I'll say is, this level of dialogue and debate, about these issues are really important. We're called kind of to do the city business on this board. I want to be very appreciative of the administration and all the directors, as well as city employees who work tirelessly every single day, but jump on and indulge the board with details about these particular questions and concerns. I think in the first couple of months, this board is doing exactly what the charter intended for us to do as it relates to scrutinizing the dollars that is going out, particularly as it relates to the scarcity of resources that we currently have in our city that we're currently faced with. So thank you. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from the board for DPW? Hearing and seeing none, I'll definitely entertain a motion.
So moved, or move approval.
a second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda today can be found on pages 19 to 20. Item number 3, Utility Associates Incorporated for $151,965. Contract number 8,000. Integrated body cameras. I requested this item be pulled down from non-routine. I think Ms. Keisha Brown is on the call. I think she verified for us that there's an exclusivity agreement between the manufacturer and this vendor. This vendor is the only vendor to sell this equipment that we've decided to utilize. And Ms. Brown, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Presidents Mosby, Mayor Scott, and other honorable members, Comptroller Henry. This item is asked to be awarded as a sole source procurement. It was fully vetted by the operations over in Department of Public Utilities for Environmental Police, and it was found that there were some patents in terms of integrating these cameras into the uniform and some other features that were offered from this particular supplier, Utilities Associates, Inc. So we come to you before the board today to ask for an award in the amount of $151,965.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, as always, for coming prepared and providing us with detailed information. Again, sole source hasn't always been used appropriately in our city. That's why it's important to pull some of these items off and get the specific detail from Ms. Brown. So thank you, Ms. Brown, for providing us that level of transparency and background. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board regarding this particular item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Since this item has been properly moved and seconded, we'll go to vote. All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed to this item, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Next up, we have on the non-routine agenda, it can be found on pages 21 through 22. This item number 6, Mandiant BBA Fire Eye Incorporated, in the amount of $653,000, ratification and extension of contract number 6,000, subject matter expert consulting services, Baltimore City Office of Information and Technology. If there is anyone from BSIT or procurement who want to speak about this, if you could speak at this point.
Good morning, Keisha Brown again, honorable members of the board. Director Todd Carter, I believe, is spearheading this project. However, he may not be on, but we're requesting a ratification and extension of the contract for Mandiant for subject matter expert consultants for the total amount of $650,000, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right, Ms. Brown. Yes.
This particular contract comes on the heels of our critical incident management situation with malware, where this company was utilized in 2019. And furthermore, they continued their consulting services as we, Mr. Comptroller, I believe this was put on routine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this item was moved back to the routine agenda.
Oh, sorry.
We've technically already approved it.
I'm so sorry. Well, Ms. Keisha Brown, you're doing such a great job of explaining. You could go through and just finish out for the citizens. But you're exactly right.
And we continue to utilize these services to continue to build the infrastructure of the city of Baltimore, in addition to having the emergency that was claimed in March of 2020 for COVID-19.
Got it. So we can actually move on. Mr. Comptroller, I blame you for not stopping us earlier. Next up, we're still with BSIT.
Mr. President, I think, did we skip item on page 21, number 5?
Let me see.
Oh, no,
No.
that's on non-routine.
The disarmed agreement, Metropolitan. Oh, you're right. You're totally right. I totally blew past that. Yep, so we'll go to that first, Mr. Comptroller. The next item on non-routine agenda today can be found on pages 21, item 5, Metropolitan Protective Services Incorporated, in the amount of $170,000. The extension of his contract, B50004352, Armed Security Guard, Department of General Services, Health, Public Works, etc. If there's anyone, I saw Director Chichi on, or someone else from DGS to speak to this matter.
Yes, sir, I am on. Good morning, Council President. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and honorable members of the board. I am Chichi Niaganesh, the Director of General Services, and I'm happy to talk about this particular item. So I know some of the questions that had come up that got it pulled onto the routine agenda included questions about why the spend has increased so significantly since inception of the contract or initiation of it in 2016. So give you some background as to why DGS had the contract in place in the first place and why it has grown so significantly. And as I do, please note, I'm speaking only on behalf of DGS. I cannot speak as to how the other agencies that utilize this contract use it, even though we are the most significant user of it. So in 2016, this contract was put in place to provide additional security to several of our facilities. So we already had unarmed security at, you've seen them at City Hall, Abel Woolman, MECU, some of the larger facilities. And in 2016, we added the armed component. And that was strategically in place to augment, not to replace the unarmed. So due to security breaches and aired concerns, we realized that we needed some element of armed security. And just for your knowledge, the only buildings in the city that had, outside of the Metropolitan Armed Security, that have an armed presence are City Hall enable woman. Enable woman has, and this is in the form of BPD personnel. And the reason that they have them enable woman is because of the Bureau of Revenue and Collections. So nowhere else did we have that additional layer of security. So since 2016, in circumstances have changed. We've had an increased need, both due to emergencies, some strategic decisions being made, including in 2017, DGS decided to add on a roving 24-hour mobile security service. This was in particular to secure, to provide security for the surplus schools that keep getting added to our inventory every year. So every year that we get new schools, we have to increase the number of patrols that the armed security company has to put in place. And so that includes not just the labor as they would in if they were stationed at a site, but also now the transportation cost of those guards driving from site to site. The reason why this was added was due to at least 2 very unfortunate incidences of vandalism in surplus schools where they were essentially stripped down to nothing. Every single inch of copper pipe was pulled out, toilet seats taken out, flooring ripped out, essentially left these buildings shells with zero, not zero, but significantly less value as assets to the city. And so to avoid that happening with some of the other vacant surplus schools, DGS added in this additional roving security company. So that was the first major change order increase, and that happened in 2017. In the past 18 months, you will see the largest spike in spend, and that is primarily due to 2 reasons. One is COVID. And so in support of some of the agencies that we deliver services to, for instance, Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, as they have set up housing for individuals experiencing homelessness in places like the hotels, we have had to provide security. They have used security using our contract. So if you think about the TRI Center at the Lord Baltimore, where they have multiple layers of security, not just at the entrance, but at the lobby levels, at the elevators, those are more people having to perform that service. And so therefore we've seen a steep increase in security personnel for COVID related reasons. Also related to COVID was the fact that the vendors started tacking on a hazard pay for the members who are being stationed at places like those homeless shelters, like the vaccination and testing sites. And so not only have the hours increased, but the rate of pay for some of their security guards has increased as well. Another huge spike last year occurred because we had to increase security at the polling center. So if you all recall, it was a very unfortunate incident where one of the security guards at a polling center was attacked. And so because of that, every single ballot box had to be secured. And the way we did that was augment the armed security presence at those sites. So, I mean, it's been a series of unfortunate events that has led to some of the really dramatic spikes. And so those explain the spikes that you would see, but we have so there's been both just a gradual increase as we increase sites where they're needed, and then they've been outlier incidences like this.
No, thank you, Director Chichi, for going over and explaining, the importance. And I think the board definitely understand that. I think the concern is specifically around the minority women business enterprise participation in the waiving of that. I think, again, many of these contracts are older contracts that are either being extended or other agencies are kind of joining on at this point. I think we've proven in the first 3 months of this new administration that this board is going to scrutinize some of those older contracts, particularly when they're talking about, last week we looked at the procurement of salt. We've looked at issues around flooring. Now we're talking about security, where we know that there are local businesses that employ city residents that have access to these type of services and resources for the city, and to just waive them away and not have minority women business enterprise kind of tied into it, I think is the biggest issue that jumps out at to me. I believe, Mr. Comptroller, you have some additional concerns as well.
Yes, actually, following up on those points, I've had conversations with purchasing and with MBU, and one specific practice I think is one we should definitely look at changing, because, well, let me sum up. This contract is a great example of something we've seen now a couple times just in the last few months.
Correct.
Where the city lets a very small contract, originally, in this case, it was $150,000 back in 2016. For a very small contract for a very defined purpose, and MBU at the time looks at the market, says there aren't really any minority businesses in this market, and it would be hard to segment this little contract, so we're just going to provide a waiver. And we end up doing a contract that's got multiple years of one-year extensions to it. Well, we come back every year to approve these extensions. The contract grows each time because, and the director laid out, how and why the contract has grown, and it's understandable. It makes sense. The problem is our policy. If that original contract had an MBE or a WBE goal, then every time we extended it, it would have gone back to MBU for compliance and to ensure that they were meeting the goal. But because there was a waiver for the initial contract, it doesn't go back to MBU anymore after that, which means over the years, as the contract gets bigger and potentially easier to segment, and as more MBE and WBE firms enter the market, MBU gets no opportunity to weigh in. And even if MBU wanted to assert itself proactively and say, hey, by the way, we now have, 2 MBE security firms that could be, subs on this contract, even if they were to say that, the original contract is written in such a way that we can't add new goals in the middle of it. And the two things I would really like this board to consider are changing the policy to require that when contracts are being extended, they go back to MBU for review regardless of whether there was a waiver or not. And also, we need to start writing language into our contracts that allows us to add or change MBE, WBE goals when we're doing extensions.
So Mr. Comptroller, we're on the same exact page. My office is currently working on cure legislation that will allow this administration to go up and kind of correct some of the things that were done over the past 5 and 6 years. Because you're right, I think this is the 4th or 5th time that we've seen this specific example come across of just $140,000, $200,000 add-on, but we're talking about $4 million or $5 million over the course of 4, 5, 6 years, where the MBWB goals, for whatever reason, were waived in the prior. I think the bigger thing is, particularly when we're in the midst of a global pandemic, when we know that there's going to be significant residual effects to our economy, that's going to bear brunt on our citizens, particularly our citizens that are either unemployed or underemployed, that we also need to look at this from a lens of local hiring and local jobs and local companies. This particular company, unfortunately, we're talking about this particular company and this particular contract today, but there's hundreds of them out there probably in the city of Baltimore. It's not headquartered in the city of Baltimore. I'm not sure how many employees it employs from the city of Baltimore. But again, we have to continue to scrutinize this in a way. I was going to basically ask you, Mr. Comptroller and Mr. Mayor, I know I asked in the past for us to kind of look at the way that the Board of Estimates agenda is formatted, but I think we need to also grow it in a way when there are extensions or add-ons that we understand and know when that original agreement was put in place, how much it has spent year to date on that original agreement, not just for this particular piece of it, because I think that brings a lot more context into kind of what we're talking about and what we're going to continue to hammer away. So to your point, Mr. Comptroller, we are working on a CARE process that will be legislation, so we can go back and try to provide the MWBOO folks the ability to clean up some of these decisions that clearly this board sees fit to kind of to change the course on. But then also, as it relates to these individual things, we have to also scrutinize it from the perspective of providing Baltimoreans and Baltimore-based companies the opportunities and access to these jobs. Again, this is security, right? This is not some hydraulic pump that DPW needs that's been around for 100 years. This is not some subject matter expertise that someone has an exclusivity agreement with the manufacturer on. This is about providing security. Again, last week we were talking about salt and talking about carpet and flooring. So is there anything else for members of the board to offer regarding this particular item? This is an item that I'm gonna ask that we kind of defer and take a step back and see if maybe there's a way for us to look at it, unless the administration or Director Chichi, there's some level of emergency or urgency that you feel as if we need to move forward today on this.
Mr. President.
There is, Mr. President, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I would just add that and I spoke with the comptroller about this too, is that we have to, and I've already told the agency as we're working to go back and do another contract around security, that there will be goals and that we do look here locally, because we know that there are companies, but I do understand from, because I actually was going to have this item removed from the agenda myself, there is some emergency situation. I'll let Director Nash talk about that.
If it's an emergency and it's something that we don't necessarily have to say to the public, or because of the level of sensitivity to that emergency, I think we can all understand. So Director Chichi, I will allow you to kind of take that, but I don't want you to say something that we probably should not be saying that's going to further put the city or individuals at risk.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mosby. And yeah, if I don't have to expound on it, I'd appreciate not. And knowing that this is just a very short-term bridge extension, I would request that it not be deferred any further.
Okay, well, in good faith and knowing that the mayor is on top of this, I say we kind of proceed. The only thing I ask the administration is if we can kind of get ahead of these things before they become urgent or emergency, so we don't have to have like this long-winded debate, but we can ensure that Baltimore-based businesses, as well as how folks are being employed through these contracts, is going to be of consistent concern of this board. And I know you understand and appreciate that. So at this point, are there any additional questions or concerns for Department of General Services or NWBOO? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. We move on to the next item, which can be found on pages 22 through 23. On this item number 7, Skyline Technology LLC.
Mr. President?
What's going on?
This item was moved to the routine agenda and has already been approved.
Got you. Sorry. You're doing your job now, Mr. Comptroller. I appreciate it. Next up, this next item, the non-routine agenda, can be found on pages 30 through 33. They are both land disposition agreements brought by the Department of Housing and Community Development. Without objection, I would like to consider these items together. Hearing and seeing no objection, I've asked these items be brought down from the non-routine perspective. Both of these instances were about approving the sale of city-owned property to nonprofit developers, but the sale price we're being asked to approve is, in one case, is lower than compared value of the respective properties. I think we have Ms. Kate Edwards on from DHCD to kind of further explain the situation to the board. Ms. Edwards.
Mr. President, I don't see her at the moment.
Okay, well, we will defer this for the moment and circle back. So we'll defer that item for the moment. The next item, which was the final matter for us on non-routine today, can be found on page 60, Department of Human Resources, Personnel Matters. There are two items on page 60 involving personnel, the office and the mayor. The first item creates a new executive director grade position. The other reclassifies at a higher grade of the existing position. At this time, we have Director Herbert on from Department of Human Resources to elaborate. Director Herbert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and other distinguished board members. The first item on page 60, position number 52947, represents the reclassification of a position from grade 900, which is the general new position grade, to grade 993. Grade 900, or the new position, is the generic grade and title for a vacancy that has not yet been classified. That is a placeholder for the vacancy while the position's final job specifications are matched to a permanent classification and grading. In this instance, the appropriate grade was that executive director position. Concerning funding for the position, while I will discuss finance on that, I can say that a separate position within the mayor's office was abolished during the normal budget offset process, because as these positions are created and regraded, there is a process through which finance budget office, the BBMR, goes through an offset process with each agency to ensure that these reclasses are cost neutral. And this instance is cost neutral both to the mayor's office and to the city's overall budget. With respect to the position, 4 to 5 agency heads will report into this position. It's a part of the mayor's executive team. This position will report to the city administrator. And it is the salary level is commensurate with the duties and responsibilities of the class and others in like positions. With respect to position number 2, this is the reclassification of a position to reflect the duties and responsibilities. This was a position that was existing in the mayor's office. And as the mayor's office reorganized from the prior administration, the duties and responsibilities of this position changed. You will note that there is a cost savings that is associated with this reclassification. Again, I will defer with finance with regard to the specifics around that. It's my understanding that the savings comes from the budgeting of the current level. The prior incumbent was budgeted at their salary level, and the current incumbent their salary is below that level, which creates the $8,000 of savings. The reclassification is to reflect the duties and responsibilities and the scope of responsibilities that this person now performs, as opposed to what the prior incumbent did under the prior administration.
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members of the board, this is Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. What Mr. Herbert has stated is correct as it relates to both positions. As it relates to item number 2, the cost savings is a fairly unique item. As an illustration, the previous incumbent made a certain salary. The new incumbent is making $8,000 less. That's what's generating the cost savings of $8,000.
Gotcha. Is the new employee, is that at the middle point of that salary range?
It's at the lower end of the salary range.
So it's below the middle point.
Correct. It's below the midpoint. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Got you. For the first position, for position number 52947, when was that position created?
This position would have been created as part of the fiscal 21 budget process. So July 1 of 20.
So it was through BBMR after that point.
Yes, sir.
And it's been sitting vacant since then.
Well, it was sitting vacant in this fiscal year.
Correct. So it was created, but no, it's never been filled until this. So we're trying to fill it at this point, correct?
That's correct.
Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for these two items.
I move approval of both items.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. This item passes. We will jump back to the item associated with the Department of Housing and Community Development. I believe Ms. Kate Edwards is currently joining us. Just for the record, this is related to pages 30 through 33, the land disposition agreements from the city through DHCD. Ms. Edwards?
Hi, yes. Do you just want me to go over the different items?
If you could just highlight exactly what the land disposition agreements entail.
Okay, so there's two, I think it's just the two that you're highlighting, the
Yes.
two, one being sold on Loretta Avenue. There's a couple properties being sold to a nonprofit there. This is for Black Women Build. And then on Pennsylvania Avenue, we have a project that is a partnership with UPC, which is Upton Planning Committee, as well as UPC Westside CDC and Upton Renaissance, which is the developer that they're working with. They inquired about these properties in 2019. We've been working with them. This project is going to be partially funded through the state through core funds. And so the price for it's 6 lots and it'll be a mixed use development priced at $600. And it's really due to the state involvement that it's kind of how the pricing worked out.
Got you. And typically when there's significant resources being applied from the federal or state, the city sometimes comes in and puts the price point, the selling point of the property, particularly to nonprofits, at a nominal cost, kind of like an in-kind contribution to the overall project.
Exactly. That's accurate. Yeah, the state, this is kind of the city's contribution to the project to match with the state's contribution.
Thank you so much for providing us that information, Ms. Edwards. Are there any additional questions or concerns from the board at this time? Hearing and seeing no additional questions or concerns, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All of both, Mr. President, or just the one at a time?
So for both items.
So moved.
Second.
So I heard it's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. As there is no additional business before this board, we will recess until bid opening at 12 noon. I'm sorry, Mr. Comptroller.
I'm sorry, I just had one quick announcement. I had circulated a memo to the other members of the board. There are some changes and clarifications to the Board of Estimates process that we wanted to publicly announce effective March 9th, 2021. The board submission deadline will be weekly on Tuesday at 11 a.m. We will also now be receiving board submissions only electronically and asking that paper copies not be submitted. Paper submissions are not needed or required for the Board of Estimates agenda directly. Agencies will still be providing one hard copy submission to the Department of Audits, and we're working on that.
Thank you,
But
Mr. Comptroller.
just wanted to share that. Thank you.
No, thank you for that update. Ms. Comptroller, if you could also look into, I guess what we talked about, I don't know what you have to do when you're in to reformat, particularly looking at when contracts started, how much they've spent, not just year to date, but to date as it relates to the life cycle of that particular contract. And then whatever agencies will have to do to ensure that we put that the city's just like a fiduciary pass through associated with the federal and state grants when we have to do the MWBOO waivers.
I know that my office is already working on a follow-up memo to speak directly to asking agencies that are doing capital projects when they're submitting an extra work order, a list of any previous extra work orders for that project now will be part of the board memo and therefore part of the agenda item. And we're also asking that all capital projects include a reference to how the 1% for art requirement affects that project and whether the project is doing an individual public art project or submitting funds to BOPA as part of a lump addressing of that funding issue. But I'm happy to make sure that we also work on memorializing the conversation that we just had today around MBOO.
And the only thing I ask is, Mr. Comptroller, before you guys close out the memo on what you're doing, if you could just give me an opportunity to kind of briefly look over it from a formatting perspective. Clearly, this is of keen interest of mine, so if you could just kind of let me look at it, I really appreciate it.
I'll have my chief of staff talk to your chief of staff.
All right, or you can call me too, bud.
I know.
All right, not seeing any additional questions or concerns. Again, as there's no new business before the board, we will recess until bid opening at 12 noon. The Board of Estimates will reconvene on March the 3rd, 2021. I thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please continue to stay safe. Please follow all health protocols by washing our hands, staying socially distant, wearing our masks. We must continue to fight this thing called COVID-19. We will get through it. Thank you, Baltimore.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
We're ready?
Yep.
12 o'clock?
12 on the nose.
Okay. Good afternoon. The Board of Estimates is now in session for the receiving and opening of bids. As part of the overall effort to limit transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the Board of Estimates is conducting bid openings virtually. Members of the public can call in to listen to bid openings live by calling 443-984-1696 and entering access code 0842939. The Board of Estimates meetings are broadcast live on Charm TV, Channel 25 on Comcast Cable in Baltimore City. Meetings are also streamed on the internet at https://www.charmtvbaltimore.com/live-stream. The Board of Estimates will continue to conduct bid openings virtually while the state of emergency declared by the Mayor of Baltimore and the Governor of Maryland remains in effect. I have the following addenda to note. Bureau of Procurement bid number B50006008, professional pool maintenance repair and replacement parks contract. Please change the bid due date from February 24th, 2021 to March 3rd, 2021. Bureau of Procurement bid number B50006181, Mattel Voice over IP software maintenance and hardware support. Please change the bid due date from February 24th, 2021 to March 3rd, 2021. Thank you.
So the addendum are noted.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Bids to be received today. Procurement bid number B50006171, smoke alarms. No bid bond, check amount. All right, here are the list of items. everything here is listed as original. So, and everything is listed as part 1 of part 2. So I'm gonna give you. Pardon? Oh, okay. Okay. This is from Sky Resources LLC. A bid amount. Okay, Sky Resources LLC. A bid amount of $839,250. Okay. Next bid is from the Baltimore Auto Supply Company for $858,750. The next one is from, I think this is Mill Supply. Yeah, Mill Supply. Their bid is in the amount of $861,750. The next bid is from Rexel Incorporated in the amount of $846,750. The next bid is from Brown's Communication Incorporated in the amount of $974,250. The next bid is from Asset Lighting and Electric Incorporated in the amount of $853,500. And the final bid I think I pulled off too many paper clips there. Is from, I believe, Capital Electric. Let me confirm that. Yeah, Capital Lighting and Supply LLC. And their bid is in the amount of $834,000. All right. That is all of the bids that I have.
I move that we refer these to the Bureau of Procurement. I second.
The motion being properly moved and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries, and I believe that that is all the business before us. So the Board of Estimates stands in recess until next Wednesday, March 3rd at 9 a.m. Thank you very much. Everyone stay safe.